The Oracle Park in San Francisco was buzzing with an energy that only a Stephen Curry community event could generate. Golden autumn sunlight streamed through the massive windows of the convention center, casting warm shadows across hundreds of eager faces. Children clutched basketballs and wore his signature Under Armour sneakers, while parents held up phones, hoping to capture a moment with the man who had redefined basketball. Stephen sat casually on a high stool at center stage, his characteristic smile lighting up the room. He wore a simple gray hoodie and jeans. No flashy jewelry, no designer outfit screaming wealth. Just a 36-year-old man who happened to be one of the greatest basketball players in history, speaking to his community like he was chatting with neighbors on his front porch. "All right, who's got the next question?" Stephen asked, his voice carrying that familiar warmth that had endeared him to millions worldwide. Hands shot up throughout the crowd like popcorn kernels hitting hot oil. Stephen's eyes scanned the audience, landing on a young girl in the third row. She couldn't have been more than 12, her Warriors jersey hanging loose on her small frame, her hair pulled back in neat braids that reminded him of his own daughters. "You, young lady in the Curry jersey," he pointed with a genuine smile. "What's your name?" "Maya," she said, her voice barely audible through the microphone. A volunteer rushed to her. "Maya, that's a beautiful name. What's your question for me?" Maya looked down at a crumpled piece of paper in her hands, then back up at Stephen. The entire arena seemed to hold its breath. When she spoke, her words carried a weight that surprised everyone in the room, including Stephen himself. "Mr. Curry, my dad always talks about how you stay humble even though you're so successful. He says that's rare. How do you do it? How do you stay normal when everyone treats you like you're not?" The question hung in the air, like a perfectly arced three-pointer. Stephen felt something shift inside his chest, not discomfort, but recognition. This wasn't about basketball statistics or championship rings. This was about something deeper, something that had been shaped by every conversation with his father Del, every prayer with his wife Aisha, every bedtime story he'd read to his children. He leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees, and for a moment, the thousands of people in the arena felt like they were witnessing an intimate conversation between a father figure and a young seeker of wisdom. "Maya," Stephen began, his voice softer now, more thoughtful, "that might be the most important question anyone's ever asked me." The arena fell silent. Even the usual shuffling of feet and whispered conversations stopped. Stephen looked out at the sea of faces, young and old, from different backgrounds, all united by their curiosity about what made this superstar tick. "You know, Maya," Stephen continued, "I think about that question every single day, not because I have to remind myself to be humble, but because I wake up every morning remembering where I came from." He paused, his mind traveling back to Charlotte, North Carolina, to a modest house where a young boy learned to dribble a basketball in the driveway. The memory was so vivid he could almost smell his mother Sonia's cooking wafting from the kitchen windows. "My parents, Del and Sonia Curry, they taught me something when I was probably younger than you are now. They said that talent is a gift, not an achievement. They told me that God gave me the ability to shoot a basketball, to see the court in a certain way, but that gift came with a responsibility." A young father in the audience nodded knowingly, holding his son closer. Several people in the crowd wiped at their eyes, recognizing the universal truth in Stephen's words. "My dad played in the NBA for 16 years, Stephen continued, his voice gaining strength. "He could have easily let me think I was special because of my last name, because I had access to trainers and courts that other kids didn't. But instead, he made me earn every single thing I got. When I was 8 years old and wanted to play on a team with older kids, he didn't make a phone call. He told me to prove I belonged there." Stephen stood up from his stool and walked closer to the edge of the stage, closing the distance between himself and Maya, whose eyes never left his face. "There was this one game when I was in high school. I was having an incredible season, probably averaged close to 30 points a game. After one particular game where I scored 42 points, I was feeling pretty good about myself. I came home expecting congratulations, maybe even a celebration. The crowd leaned in, sensing this wasn't a story Stephen told often. Instead, my dad was waiting for me in the kitchen. He'd watched the whole game. And you know what he said? He said, "Son, I counted 7 times you could have passed the ball to make your teammates better, but you chose to shoot instead. Tomorrow, we're going to work on seeing the whole court, not just the basket." A soft murmur rippled through the audience. Parents exchanged glances, recognizing the kind of love that challenges rather than simply celebrates. That night I realized that being great wasn't about putting up numbers. It was about making everyone around you better. It was about understanding that individual success means nothing if it doesn't lift up your team, your community, your family. Stephen's voice carried a conviction that made everyone in the room feel like they were receiving a personal lesson from a mentor. "But Maya," Stephen continued, his tone becoming even more personal, "staying humble isn't just about remembering where you came from. It's about practicing gratitude every single day." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, showing the screen to the crowd. On his home screen was a photo of his wife Aisha and their children, Riley, Ryan, and Cannon, all laughing together in their backyard. "Every morning, before I check any basketball news, before I look at social media, before I do anything else, I look at this picture. And I remember that Stephen Curry, the basketball player, is just one part of who I am. I'm a husband first, a father first, a son first, a friend first." A woman in the front row dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. The vulnerability in Stephen's voice was touching something deep in everyone present. "My wife Aisha keeps me grounded in ways I can't even describe. When I come home after scoring 50 points in a game, she might congratulate me, but then she'll immediately ask if I helped Cannon with his homework, or if I remembered to call my grandmother, or if I noticed that our neighbor's dog got out again and might need help." Gentle laughter rippled through the crowd. But it was laughter of recognition, not amusement. "My kids don't care that I've won NBA championships. Riley still beats me in Connect 4 and talks trash about it. Ryan challenges me to dance battles and usually wins. Cannon just wants me to read him bedtime stories and make funny voices for all the characters." Stephen's smile grew wider as he talked about his family, and the entire arena could feel the genuine love radiating from him. "Last month, Cannon came to me after school and said, 'Daddy, my friend Tommy said you're famous. Are you famous?' And I told him, 'Son, I'm just a basketball player who works really hard and tries to be kind to people. The most important thing I'll ever be is your daddy.'" The silence in the arena was profound. Several people were openly crying now, moved by the raw honesty of a man who could have anything he wanted but clearly treasured the simplest things most. "You see, Maya, humility isn't about thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less. It's about waking up every day grateful for the opportunity to use your gifts to make other people's lives better." Stephen looked directly at Maya, who was hanging on every word. "Every time I step on that basketball court, I'm not just playing for myself. I'm playing for every kid who's been told they're too small, too weak, not athletic enough. I'm playing for my teammates who trust me to make the right decision. I'm playing for my family who sacrificed so much for my dreams. I'm playing for my community that supported me when nobody else believed." "And Maya," Stephen said, his voice now carrying the weight of deep conviction, "here's what I've learned about success and staying humble. The moment you start believing your own hype, the moment you start thinking you're better than other people because of what you've accomplished, that's the moment you stop growing." He gestured to the crowd around Maya. "Look around this room. Every person here has a story. Every person here has struggles, dreams, talents that might not be celebrated on television, but they matter just as much as any basketball game I've ever played." Stephen began walking along the front edge of the stage, making eye contact with different sections of the audience. "That man over there in the blue shirt, he might be working 2 jobs to provide for his family. That's heroic. That woman holding her baby, she might be a teacher shaping young minds every single day. That's world-changing. That teenager in the Warriors cap, he might be the first person in his family to graduate high school. That's revolutionary. Each person Stephen pointed to seemed to stand a little taller, feeling seen and valued in a way they might never have experienced before. Real success, Maya, isn't measured by how many people know your name. It's measured by how many people you help remember their own worth. It's not about how high you rise, but how many people you bring with you. Stephen returned to center stage, his presence now somehow both powerful and gentle. My faith teaches me that every blessing comes with responsibility. Every talent I have, every opportunity I've been given, every platform I've been blessed with, it's all meant to be shared. When I made my first $1 million, my parents didn't throw a party. They asked me what I was going to do to help other people with it. The crowd was completely captivated. This wasn't just a basketball star giving generic advice. This was a human being sharing the deepest truths that guided his life. So when you ask me how I stay humble, Maya, the answer is simple. I remember every single day that I'm not self-made. I remember the coaches who stayed after practice to work with me. I remember the teammates who passed me the ball when they could have shot it themselves. I remember the fans who cheered for me when I was struggling. I remember my wife who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Stephen's voice grew stronger, filled with passion. And most importantly, I remember that my job isn't to be the greatest basketball player who ever lived. My job is to be the best version of Stephen Curry I can be every single day, and to use that platform to help other people be the best versions of themselves. He looked directly at Maya one final time. Maya, you asked how I stay normal when everyone treats me like I'm not. The truth is, I am normal. I'm a person who makes mistakes, who has bad days, who worries about his children, who sometimes burns dinner, who gets nervous before big games. The only difference is that I've been blessed with a basketball skill that lots of people enjoy watching. Stephen's final words came with a smile that seemed to embrace everyone in the room. But here's what I want you and everyone here to remember. You don't need to be a professional athlete to impact people's lives. You don't need to be famous to be significant. You just need to be kind, work hard, stay grateful, and remember that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. If you can do that, you'll change the world, one person at a time. The arena erupted in applause, but it wasn't the kind of applause you hear after a great basketball play. It was the sound of people being moved, inspired, and reminded of what really matters in life. Maya stood up in her seat, tears in her eyes, and mouthed, "Thank you," to Stephen. Around her, hundreds of other people were wiping their eyes, hugging their children, and feeling like they'd just received one of the most important lessons of their lives. As Stephen waved to the crowd and walked off the stage, the impact of his words continued to ripple through the arena. Parents would drive home talking to their children about gratitude and kindness. Young people would leave inspired to use their own gifts to help others. Adults would remember that success without character is ultimately empty. Within hours, videos of Stephen's response would be shared millions of times across social media platforms. News outlets would feature the story not in their sports sections but in their human interest segments. The clip would be translated into dozens of languages and shared in countries around the world. But perhaps most importantly, Maya would go home that day with a new understanding of what it means to be truly successful, and she would carry that lesson with her for the rest of her life, eventually passing it on to others in her own unique way. Because that's how real impact works. One authentic moment, one genuine conversation, one humble response can create waves that reach far beyond anything we can imagine.